What's up, Tweenerheads? Welcome back to another video today on Tweenerhead Tennis. I am Phil, the original Tweenerhead, and welcome to my channel. This is where we talk about tennis in a more casual way for you guys to find out what's going on and off the court. But before we start this video, I have a big announcement. We just started our own Patreon page. It's down in the link below, and you guys can join for more behind-the-scenes content, become a member, and become more interactive in our Tweenerhead community. Now today, we are going to be talking about the men's and women's draw for this upcoming Australian Open. So let's start with the women's draw. First up, we have Ash Barty as the 1 seed, which is not surprised. She'll be facing off against Lesia Tarenko from the Ukraine. Then we have Polina Hercog versus Rebecca Peterson from Sweden. Sashanov versus a qualifier. Sashanov can have Sasnovich, excuse me, I completely butchered that. Sasnovich has a pretty good look into the second round, as well as the third if she gets by. Yeah, because she would have to face Rybakina from Kazakhstan or Bernarda Pera, and then she would have to face the winner of Barty in that side. That's not that bad. Bernarda Pera is also a pretty good player that's been coming out recently and showing her, that's the word I'm looking for, her talent. And then we have, after Bernarda Pera and Rybakina, we have Allison Risk, another American in the draw. There's so many Americans in this draw. There's probably over, I think, 8 American women seeded at this year's Australian Open. And on the men's side, there's so many there's just so many Americans in this draw, which is great to see. But I'm really debating how far they're going to get. So I would like to know from you guys. Comment down below which American is going to get the farthest at this year's Australian Open. Then we have, who do we have next? Allison Risk versus Yafan Wang. Gulabich, Zhu, Gergis, Kuzmova. And that should be an interesting match. Petra Martic versus Christina McHale is a good matchup. Martic had a really good French Open and then a really good Charleston last year. I also interviewed her at Charleston, so if you want to check that out, definitely subscribe to the channel. But yeah, Martic should do well there. She has a pretty good for the seed. She should face off against Risk later on in that half of the draw. But one of the best first round matchups I'm looking forward to is Madison Keys versus Daria Kazakhina, just because that could be an upset in the making. But I just want to see how far Madison Keys can get into this draw as the 10th seed. That would be very good for her to see at another hardcourt tournament like she did at the US Open a couple years ago, where she lost to Sloane Stephens at the finals. Then we have Lynette versus Roos, Shuang Pei versus a qualifier, Gasparian versus Maria Sakkari. Sakkari, the 22 seed, she will probably face off against Keys, if I'm not mistaken, yeah. Which doesn't look that bad. That would be a very interesting match. Then we have Alexandrova versus Teichmann, Kanepi versus a qualifier, Padoza versus a qualifier, and Siniakova versus Kvitova. That's also another one of the top first round matchups I'm looking forward to, Siniakova versus Kvitova, both from the Czech Republic. Both have won a Grand Slam, Siniakova in doubles, Kvitova in singles. They've played Fed Cup together, so they're going to know each other really well, so I'm very excited to see that matchup. Then to the second quarter of the draw, we have Naomi Osaka versus Marie Buskova. That's interesting because Serena Williams and Osaka are on the same quarter of the draw, and that's going to be very interesting. Then we have Sensei Sang versus a qualifier, and then... Really? We really had to put Venus Williams again against Coco Gauff in the first round of the Grand Slam? So that's 2 out of the 4 majors that this has happened. Why? Why are we doing this? And it's matchups like that that makes me question why the Australian Open has to do the whole draw behind closed doors, and then it's like, oh, here's the draw reveal, not the draw ceremony. You know what I mean? Because they do all the matchups in secret, in hush-hush, in the back, and then they just reveal them. And it's not really anything... Why wouldn't they just do it live? I think it would be a lot easier. But it's stuff like that that makes me question whether or not they do this on purpose. And sometimes I think they do, which is tough, and I'd rather that not happen. Like, it's cool to have these first round matchups, but really? We have to do it again? Come on. Who's next after that? Then we have Thursday from Romania versus Stritsova. Sloane Stevens, who's the 24 seed, versus Shuang Zhang, who would have to play Stosur or a qualifier. Then we have Lizette Cabrera, Australian wildcard, versus a qualifier. That's not bad for a draw for a wildcard. And then you have Sophia Kenin, the 14th seed, another young American. She's going to do really well, I think, this year. She had her breakout year, I think, last year, and then this year she'll probably do really well. Definitely one to look out for at Grand Slams as well. And she's on Osaka's side before she gets to Serena Williams' quarter of the draw. Because on Serena Williams' side, you have Konta versus Jabeur, Brangle versus Garcia. Garcia's not ranked. Wow, she's fallen off a little bit. Christy Ahn versus Caroline Wozniacki. Interesting. And then the winner of that would be Yastremska, and the qualifier would play Wozniacki or Christy Ahn. So if Wozniacki beats Ahn and then Yastremska beats the qualifier, it would be very interesting to see Yastremska beat Wozniacki at her last ever Grand Slam. It's also interesting how they put Wozniacki on the same quarter as Serena Williams. Like, they want them to play against each other if they do really well. So it's like a friendship tale. Like, Wozniacki's best friend beats her at the Australian Open for her last slam. And then I could just hear it in the speech. It's like, I wouldn't have wanted anyone else to lose to but you. And that's what I mean. It's the... Imagine if they put Wozniacki versus Serena in the first round. I would have lost my mind. So then you have, after Yastremska in the qualifier, you have Wang, Parmentier, Fiona Ferro, someone else we interviewed. Go check it out during our time at the NYJTL Open, the Bronx Open, excuse me. And she's playing Alison Van Uytvangt. Excuse me, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that. Tamara Zindensek versus Han, another wild card from Korea. And then Potapova, a young Russian, versus Serena Williams. All Serena has to... Like, the major people in Serena's half of the draw is Osaka, Venus, Coco, Sloane if she gets through. Sloane hasn't been playing well recently. She's been bouncing out first, second rounds of these tournaments leading up to the Australian Open. Yastremska could be a tough challenge. I think that would be very interesting. And then Wozniacki as well. And Kenin has to go through Osaka as well. So that would be... That's, I think, the tougher quarter of the women's draw. Then let's go to the next one. So now we're on the second half where we have Bencic versus Anna Karolina Schmitzlova. Sorry. Then you have Ostapenko playing a qualifier. Tormo versus Kudermentova. Sharma. I actually hit with her at the New Haven 125K. That was actually a fun hit with her. Versus Annette Kontaveit. That would actually be very interesting as well. Donna Vecic versus Sharapova. Very good first round matchup. That's going to be exciting to see, I think. Elise Cornet qualifier. Swiatek from Poland versus Tomea Babos. Swiatek, very good up-and-coming young Polish player. Let's see. Carlos Suarez Navarro she announced her retirement recently, that this is going to be her last season, versus Sabalenka. Mertens versus Kovanic. Kristina Pliskova, Carolina's twin sister, versus Heather Watson. Cici Bellis is back. That's really good for the Americans, versus Tatiana Maria. Flipkins versus Muhova. Muhova, a very good young talent from Czech Republic. I actually talked to her at the Bronx Open as well. So these are all interviews you guys are missing. So subscribe to the channel and go watch them. Diachenko, Putintseva versus Sue Shea. That should be interesting. Two scrappy players. That is bright. Misaki Doi versus a qualifier. Jennifer Brady versus Simona Halep. Jennifer Brady recently had a big upset, so that's going to be interesting to see her play Simona Halep. And also another interesting matchup, I think, is Svitolina versus Katie Bolter. I think that's going to be a very interesting matchup as well, because Katie has been out recently with an injury, and to see her come back at the Grand Slam level is going to be really fun to watch, especially against Svitolina, who has... We've been saying that she's one of the next ones on the women's tour to win a Grand Slam. She's been so close, but yet she hasn't broken through, so we're waiting to see her make an impact at a Grand Slam as well. And then the last part of the draw, we have Lauren Davis versus a qualifier, another American, 26, 27 years old, playing a qualifier. Good draw for her. Garbine Muguruza versus a qualifier. Ayla Tomljanovic versus Vedosova. Tomljanovic is a good young Australian. Interviewed her as well at the VCore Open. Go check it out. Against Vedosova, which is very interesting. That should be good. Anisimova, young American, very talented. Playing a tricky Zarina Diaz from Kazakhstan as well. Jasmine Paolini versus Anna Blinkova. Young talent. Oh, God. Bondarenko versus Rodionova. Sorry. Vondrasova, 15th seed versus Kuznetsova. That's an interesting matchup because Kuznetsova, Grand Slam champion, playing a young Czech Republic player. That's going to be very good. Another first-round matchup to definitely watch, especially with competitiveness as well. Camila Giorgi, playing a qualifier. You never know with Camila Giorgi. Go check out her interview. Let's see, Kozlova versus Priscilla Hahn, wild card from Australia. Angelique Kerber will face the winner of that, and she plays a qualifier in the first round. Interesting, from the Australian Open, former Australian Open champion. Then you have Pavlyuchenkova versus Nina Stojanovic from Serbia. Then Taylor Townsend versus Jessica Pegula. Two Americans that are really fun to watch. Pegula, who won the City Open in 2019 last year, and Taylor Townsend, breakout story at the US Open, great. Fun to watch as well. Then you have Laura Sigmund versus Coco Vandeweghe. And then you're rounding off with the 2 seed, which is Kristina Landanovic versus Karolina Pliskova. That could actually be an upset as well. I definitely could see that as an upset. Now let's move on to the men's draw. So if you look at the men's draw, we're starting off with the top half. We have Nadal versus Hugo Deline. Rafa's seems to have a clear path until the third round, it looks like, because you have Delbonis versus Souza, a qualifier versus a qualifier. Interesting. Then you have a qualifier versus Pablo Carreno Busta. So that should be an interesting matchup, Spain versus Spain. Then you have Kyrgios versus Sonego, and then Cuevas versus Simone. Uchiyama versus Michael Ymer from Sweden. Good young talent, by the way. And then Kachanov versus a qualifier. So, two people that can really give Rafa a hard time before getting to the fourth round and farther is Kyrgios, who has a better percentage against the big three than anyone else on tour, and Kachanov, really. So that's going to be an interesting... So grab your popcorn for that, because that's going to be a really interesting matchup. Then you have Monfils versus Liu, Karlovic versus Pospisil. Interesting. And Monfils is the 10 seed too. I forgot about that. That's interesting, because Monfils has to face Thiem, Fritz, Auger-Aliassime. That's interesting. That's going to be a tough one to get out of, because Karlovic, Pospisil, Duckworth, Bedene, qualifier versus Auger-Aliassime. So Auger-Aliassime is probably going to meet Monfils if they both play well up until that point. And I would like to see Auger-Aliassime play really well against Monfils, because if he gets to the third round and farther, you then have Fritz versus a qualifier, Anderson versus a qualifier, Alex Bolt, tricky lefty, versus Ramos Vinolas, and then Manarino versus Thiem. So out of this quarter, you could have a possible third round having Monfils versus Thiem, Auger-Aliassime versus Thiem. Anderson is a possibility too, but I haven't seen him play to the best of his potential like he did a couple years ago. So that's an interesting quarter. And then the next part, you have Medvedev versus Tiafoe. That's such a good matchup. That's going to be so much fun to watch. So that would be really interesting. Then you have the U.S. Open hero, Dominic Kupfer versus a qualifier, Gaston versus Jamie Munar, Popyrin versus Tsonga. Interesting matchup. And Tsonga's the 28th seed. He's back. Interesting. That's cool to see. Isner versus Montero, and then a qualifier versus a qualifier. Kecmanovic versus Seppi, veteran that's been pushing the top 100 forever now. Very good. Versus one of the next gens, Kecmanovic. Then you have Zumur versus Wawrinka. That's an interesting quarter, because I would like to see Wawrinka play Medvedev. But I would also like to see Tiafoe keep his points that he made from last year's Australian Open, where he made the quarterfinal. Then you have Goffin versus Shardy, Herbert versus Norrie. Norrie, tricky lefty as well, from Britain. I thought he did pretty well at the ATP Cup too. Sagita versus a qualifier. Chris O'Connell versus Rublev. Rublev on this quarter of the draw, because Basilashvili versus Kwan, Verdasco qualifier, Ruud, Gerasimov, and then Kecinato versus Zverev. How far do you think Zverev will get into this part of the draw? Because Zverev will have to play Basilashvili, who's a very good Georgian, or Verdasco. Verdasco, tricky lefty as well, has been on tour forever. And then if you go up a little bit more, if Rublev gets to the third round or fourth round to play Zverev, I'm taking Rublev, 100%. Just because Zverev during the ATP Cup did not look like he wanted to play. So I want to see his motivation to do better in slams this year. Zverev, I'm talking about. Then you have, on this side, you have Berrettini, the 8th seed. Ooh, that's cool. Versus Harris, a wild card from Australia. Then you have Sandgren, qualifier. Who is that? Baena versus Berankis. Query versus Koric. Interesting matchup as well. I would like to see that. That's going to be a fun one to watch. Then you have Pella, Argentinian 22, versus John Patrick Smith, wild card from Australia. Very good doubles player he is. Sound like Yoda there. Barrere versus a qualifier. Thompson versus Bublik. That's going to be a fun one to watch as well. Bublik, very flashy, kind of takes off that Kyrgios vibe of nonchalantness when he hits. Versus Jordan Thompson, tough guy to face. Then you have Opelka Fonini. That's going to be fun, because Opelka beat Fonini at the US Open last year. So to see them play again for the first slam of 2020 is going to be very interesting to watch. Then you have Shapovalov versus Fucsovics. Good matchup for both of them. Fucsovics has always been a good player. A little bit underrated, but for him to play Shapovalov, if Shapovalov can get through him, and if Jannik Sinner, the next gen ATP winner from last year, Shapovalov can get through those two, he's going to build some great confidence going into the Australian Open and for the year, I think. Meyer versus Tommy Paul. Tommy Paul, I hope he gets through, because then he would have to play the winner of Lendero, another Argentinian, versus Dimitrov. Let's see if Dimitrov can get on the right foot in 2020, because last year was kind of a bust for him. So let's see him do well here. Hurkacz, 31 seed. Definitely one of the biggest ones to watch for 2020. 100% from Poland, playing a qualifier. Millman versus Humbert. Krajinovic versus a qualifier. Plays the winner of Johnson and Federer. So Federer's quarter of the draw. You have Berrettini, Fognini, Shapovalov, Sinner, Hurkacz, Koric. Compared to Rafa's quarter and Medvedev's quarter, a little lighter, but still, I think, definitely a good possibility. But he does have to play Steve Johnson. Steve Johnson does not go down without a fight, so that's going to be interesting to watch. Then in the last quarter, we have Tsitsipas versus Caruso. Interesting matchup. Kohlschreiber versus Giron. Oh, Giron's in this. Let's go. So both fighters for Kohlschreiber and Giron. Giron, big fighter, versus Kohlschreiber. That's going to be interesting to watch. I just want to see how that pans out. Christian Garin versus Travaglia from Italy. Decent matchup. Raonic versus Albot. Raonic coming back as the 32 seed, playing a tough player like Albot should be interesting to watch, especially if you want to see big ground strokes. That's going to be fun. Benoit Paire versus Moriel Stebe. Stebe? Stebe. Cilic is not ranked. Interesting. He's not seeded. Versus Mutet. Then we have Andujar versus Michael Moe, wildcard from the US. I would like to see Michael Moe do well. He's been playing a lot of challengers, and he's definitely up and coming, but we have to see if he can show himself in these big stage tournaments and then get those points to play bigger tournaments instead of just challengers. Lopez versus Batista Gute. That's a fun Spanish matchup. Diego Schwartzman versus Lloyd Harris. Lloyd Harris now in the final for Adelaide, I believe. So that's going to be fun. Davidovich Fokina. Yeah, I'm reading that right. Davidovich Fokina versus the qualifier. Mark Paulman's wildcard from Australia versus Kushkin. Edmund versus Lajovic. Evans versus Mackenzie McDonald. Mackenzie McDonald's back. Congratulations. Good for him. Definitely playing one of the... Like, I've said this for a while, but definitely playing one of the most underrated players on tour, Daniel Evans. So that's going to be an interesting matchup for him to kind of get his feet warm, playing some of the best players in the world. Then you have Nishioka versus Gier. Tatsuma Ito versus a qualifier. And then Struff versus Djokovic. Struff, one of the biggest killers of the top seeds in the ATP last year in 2019, playing the 2-seed Novak Djokovic. So Djokovic has Tsitsipas, Paire, Batista Gute, Schwartzman, Evans on his side of the draw. Interesting matchup. Let me know what you guys think of who's going to win the Australian Open and what are your picks. For me, I would definitely... For me, it's definitely still one of the big three. If Roger can get through his half to face Rafa, that's going to be interesting, as well as Djokovic. If he can get through, that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Dark horse on the men's side, I would definitely have to... I wouldn't say Tsitsipas. Tsitsipas could win this Australian Open. I definitely think he could do it. I know, interesting pick, right? But for unseeded players to go far in the tournament... Or I would, not even unseeded players, I would definitely pick Wawrinka as well, or Medvedev, to definitely go far into this tournament for the dark horse surprise. I would like to see Felix Auger-Aliassime play well, but he also might be the biggest bust, so I don't know. You guys let me know. And for the women's side, I would like to see... I would love to see Ash Barty win in her home country. I think that would be unbelievable for Australian tennis. And for her as well, to go from winning the French that no one suspected her to win to winning the Australian Open in her home country. It would be unbelievable. Osaka would be really cool to win again in Australia, just to keep her momentum there, just to make her like one of those tournaments like Azarenka. Like the Australian Open was her Grand Slam. I would like to see Osaka make the Australian Open her Grand Slam as well. Serena would be interesting as well to see her win. So definitely... see her win as well. Yastremska's been playing very well as well. She's definitely one to look out for. Let's see. Sloane might be another bust just because she hasn't been playing well up. She's had a very slow start to 2020. I would like to see Coco Gauff play well for a 15-year-old because now she's... This year when she turns 16, she's able to play the full calendar year basically. So to see her play the Australian Open and then play... more tournaments, I would like to see her do better and hopefully do well. So that's going to be interesting. I think Kenin as well is definitely one that could make an impact at this year's Australian Open as well. But let me know, guys. I would like to hear your guys' opinion as well. And if you want to check us out on all our social medias to follow us for more behind-the-scenes content, definitely check them out in the link in our description as well as our website at tweenerheadtennis.com. And don't forget about our Patreon we just started. If you want to see more behind-the-scenes stuff that hasn't been released to the public yet, make sure to go check it out. And as always, guys, thanks again for watching. Hope to see you guys soon. Thanks, guys.